At 5:70 p.m. on the fateful evening of 30th January 1948, Nathuram Godse fired 3 shots at Mohandas Gandhi at point-blank range. Godse did not flee the scene and himself called for the police, who arrested him. As the world mourned Gandhi, the regions of what is today Maharashtra saw one of the bloodiest chapters in history. A forgotten episode and its very occurrence denied. The 1948 Maharashtra Brahmin genocide. Brahmins, especially Chitpavan Brahmins, were hunted down for the crime of belonging to a particular caste and having a surname of the killer of Gandhi. At first, those having the surname Godse were targeted, but soon the violence spread to other subcastes beyond the Chitpavans like Deshasthas and Karhade Brahmin communities in Maharashtra. Due to the scant press coverage and the apathy of those in power at that time, there is very less information about the pogrom on public domain. But there are several anecdotes of survivors and their descendants who are yet to heal from the wounds of their past. The incidents find place in Vikram Sampath's Part 2 of Veer Savarkar's biography. In one incident that is described, a teacher having the surname Godse, living in abject poverty, was sleeping outside along with his father and grandfather when goons stormed in, tied them to their cots and burned them alive. Mainly, vadas known as houses of the Brahmins were targeted and torched. In February 1948, 1,000 homes belonging to Chitpavan Brahmins were officially reported as having been burnt down and an unspecified number were killed. In Nagpur, the home and offices of veteran journalist Gajanan Triambak Madkolkar, who was chief editor of the prominent Marathi daily Tarun Bharat, were burned down by mobs. In Kolhapur, renowned filmmaker of the times Bhalji Pendarkar, a Karhade Brahmin, suffered a huge loss with damage to his studio. The biggest violence took place in the 7 Patwardhan princely states such as Sangli, where the mills and factories owned by Chitpavans were destroyed by rioters. A truckload of people had come to the house of one Sadhu Bhav Deshpande, an employee at the Falton Sugar Works, and beheaded him in front of his wife. The mob also destroyed 15 sugarcane transport bogies meant for transporting cane to the factories from the farms. In another incident at Sangalwadi, an entire oil mill was torched by the mob. In Sholapur, a mob had come to burn the house of a family when a resident who had a pistol fired in the air, telling the mob that he wouldn't move and they would have to burn him along with the house to get to him. And the mob did just that. They burnt him with the house. Anybody directly or remotely associated with the RSS or the Hindu Mahasabha were targeted. Mobs broke into the offices of the Hindu Mahasabha and the RSS and ransacked houses and shops belonging to known members of these organizations. A woman who headed the women's wing of the RSS in Satara district was arrested for being complicit in Gandhi's murder. Her husband, who had nothing to do with the RSS, was also arrested, and both of them languished in jail for 4 to 5 months. The revolutionary freedom fighter Savarkar himself was not spared when a mob of 500 to 1,000 men gathered in front of his house and began stoning it, as rumors had circulated that people close to Savarkar had been distributing sweets to celebrate Gandhi's death. The anti-Brahmin riots were not revenge or a one-off instance of anti-Brahmin hatred in the region. The groundwork for the anti-Brahmin riots had been prepared by decades of anti-Brahmin agitation, anti-Brahmin hate theatre, and social boycotts, spearheaded by the Satyashodhak Samaj, which was founded by the 19th century ideologue Mahatma Jyotirao Phule. The wave of violence in the aftermath of Gandhi's death is usually left unmentioned in the numerous hagiographies of the Mahatma. Maureen Patterson, who researched the Chitpavan community from the 1950s to the late 1990s, was not given access to relevant police files on the violence. Even today, scholars cannot get access to Maharashtra's archival material post-independence. This massacre of Hindu nationalists and Brahmins is similar to the 1984 massacre of Sikhs by Congress secularists in Delhi and elsewhere after the murder of former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi by her Sikh bodyguards. Dwarka Prasad Mishra, a senior Congress leader himself in Nagpur, wrote unapologetically in his memoirs about the manhunt targeting the Brahmins. He wrote that a large number of those who indulged in the violence were congressmen, even office bearers of the party. But unlike in the case of the anti-Sikh pogrom, where a few local Congress leaders were brought to trial after a long delay, and where references to the events keep on being made in public discourse today, the anti-Brahmin riots had no consequences for the perpetrators, and the events were flushed down the memory hole, never to be heard of again.